Good morning, wise women. So happy to have you here. We're excited to bring forth this particular speaker. You're going to love it. I want to remind you, please do not forget that we're collecting food for Mercy Learning Center. I'll come to you, or you can come to 597 Westport Avenue, and I'd be sure to greet you at the door. Thank you so much. And now here's our Margaret to introduce our speaker.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome again to our next virtual meeting. We're very pleased today that we have Robbin Zella from the Housatonic Museum of Art to speak with us about that museum. Robbin has been director of that museum for 21 years, and she has a history of being at other locations doing similar work in the art community. So she's developed programs, managed their growth, and really seen Housatonic Museum of Art grow into something that's a very valuable community resource that we all like to be able and see things. So I'll turn it over to Robbin now. We look forward to what she has to say. And I remind you again, you can email questions. The email address will be at the bottom of the screen. If you email questions, I'll ask them when her presentation is over. So take it over, Robbin.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. This is fun. I'm getting used to doing these Zoom meetings. It's a whole new way of communicating with people. It's kind of, a little like being on TV. I don't know. It's a little strange. Anyway, Margaret wanted me to mention some housekeeping things about how we run and how you can get here and how convenient we are. So I do want to mention we're located right off exit 27. Right off the highway. We have our own parking garage, which is connected to the facility. You enter the garage and then you walk in through an internal campus and then right into the building. So it's extremely safe. We do understand that Bridgeport does have an image issue that we always try to overcome. But when you're downtown, it really is a wonderful place. There's wonderful restaurants. We're just steps away from the Barnum Museum, steps away from Ralph and Rich's restaurant. And of course, our own facility is 400,000 square feet, and most of it is filled with art. So you can take as long or as little time as you want to wander through the campus. Right now, the Burt Chernow Galleries are not open because of COVID. And even though Governor Lamont has said that we're back in business, the college, just for safety reasons, has decided to wait and open the facility, being the Chernow Galleries, up in September, just for the safety of our students and our staff and our faculty. Anyway, I'm going to give you a brief overview. I don't see any slides. Are there slides up? Hello?
John, you're going to put those slides up, right?
Yeah, okay, great. All right, so you can go to the first slide, Sean. Can he hear me? Okay, great. All right, just leave that up for a few minutes. So as the only art museum in Bridgeport, Connecticut, the Housatonic Museum of Art strives to be an exemplary public art museum through education, exhibitions, and conservation, with programming that's free and open to the public. It is home to one of the most significant permanent art collections of any two-year college in the United States. The HMA was founded in 1967 by the late Burt Chernow, who was a professor of art and art history. Over the course of 50 plus years, the collection has grown now to over 7,000. When I started here, there was about 3,500 works, and so it's doubled. It might be even a little more than that now. And it includes outstanding examples of modern and contemporary art, as well as ethnographic objects from Africa, Oceania, and the Americas. Burt believed that the community college and the museum's educational mission was and is to provide individuals with an opportunity to engage with original works of art by integrating the collection into the learning environment. Thematic exhibitions are on display throughout the college and the campus grounds, and the Burt Chernow Galleries make the collection accessible on a daily basis for students and visitors alike. Many of the HMA exhibitions, lectures, and programs are designed to examine in a thoughtful way the issues and challenges facing the community. So, for example, we featured Westport artist Ann Weiner a few years ago, and her exhibit covered a number of women's issues like sex trafficking and honor killings and all of that. And we had, Anne was instrumental in funding a lot of speakers to come to campus, and a lot of our sociology students and literary majors and across disciplines came to many of those lectures. So it was very successful. It let us do a deep dive into women's issues and political issues. And so that's what we like to do here, is to create exhibitions that will be relevant across disciplines to our students. The HMA reaches over 10,000 annual visitors, including a primary audience of over 6,000 full and part-time students. Of course, these numbers are prior to COVID. We serve residents and visitors from the greater Bridgeport area, the state of Connecticut, and around New England. Through a variety of community partnerships, the HMA provides on-campus free programming ordinarily unavailable to our students. We have very financially strapped students, so going into the city to the Metropolitan or MoMA or any of those things are not really feasible for our students. So having all of these resources on campus help broaden their scope of their education. And when we collaborate with community partners for specific projects, we have a museum committee that also includes members of the community, so that we're informed about what those issues are in the community and how best we might address them through either exhibitions or programming. So, you know, we're happy to work with other members who have a lot more information about different constituents than we might have. On the screen now, we got a beautiful recent gift valued over $1 million works from 9 collectors that came through a single organization. And it included many works by many artists. Some are on display already around the building, but the single largest gift was 615 photographs from the renowned Sports Illustrator photographer Walter Yosh. And we are planning a special event, we're hoping, for October. So it'll be a fundraiser, and we want to have many of his works on display. And I'm hoping that he might even come to talk about his work. So it'll be obviously a sports themed event. And Walter Yosh's images have appeared on over 300 covers of Sports Illustrated, more than any other photographer in the world. He has a career spanning more than 50 years, and he's worked with almost every athlete at the top of their game, including Muhammad Ali, Cristiano Ronaldo, Michael Phelps, Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, and Kobe Bryant. All of them are represented in the gift that we received as well. Yosh has been dubbed the Rembrandt of sports photography, thanks to his understanding of light and shadow. And the secret of his success is that he takes a lot of photos, and he has crafted a rapport with each of these athletes. So that, for example, there was a story between Michael Jordan was in the slam dunk contest, and he talked to Michael Jordan, and he said, you know, I want to get a really great shot of you, and what can we do? So Michael Jordan said, I'll tap my knee so you know which side I'm going to shoot from the basket. So that's kind of how he gets these great shots too. He does have direct relationships with these people. It's not just by chance. Sean, you want to go to the next picture? We also received from that same gift a number of political photographs, which again are relevant to our students because you know, we can use them in exhibitions about world events. And Peter Turnley and his brother David, they're twins. They're both They're both photographers. They were in a show at the International Center of Photography called Double Exposure. We don't have any of David's work. We just received Peter's, and his work has been seen over 40 times on the cover of Newsweek. And this piece says Kosovo refugees. So we're pleased to have those works in our collection as well. Do you want to go to the next slide? All right, so we have, as I said, 7,000 objects in our collection, and Burt would take, as many museums do, all the works that a donor wanted to give. Sometimes some of the works are in great condition, sometimes they're in not so great condition. There wasn't much money for conservation during the course of Burt's time. His energies were spent in acquiring works. So the piece you see on your left is what the work looked like before. This is Joseph Levi. And these two pieces were featured in an exhibition of op art at MoMA. And you can see the Formica that's currently on the right side had completely fallen off. The glue had dried out. There were coffee stains on whatever remained. And I was able to track the artist down, and he is from Connecticut. He went to school at UConn. He is now living in Rome. He's in his 80s. I was able to track him down, and I asked him how he would prefer us to treat his work of art. Could we, since he used industrial materials, could we simply replace the Formica, or would we have to go through the additional expense of restoring the original Formica? So he walked us through. He said, no, you can use new materials. Just make sure that they are they're, similar to what I used. And so as you can see on the right, they're fully restored. The fluorescent lights were replaced. There were big dents in the front screen. These screens create a moire effect where you see those designs. So the screens were repaired, and now they are on display when you get a chance to visit the museum, and they're in our Masters of Op Art exhibition. So I invite you to take a look at that when you come. Also, we try to get depending on how expensive it is to get a work cleaned and treated, we try to get between 4 or 2 and 4 works done a year. So sometimes they don't need any quote unquote repair. They're just really dirty. They've been hanging on the wall for 30 plus years. They could have been hanging on somebody else's wall for an additional 30 years. So the dust, the smoke, all of those things. And, when people did smoke, it created a yellow film on the work of art. And I mention that because I had 2 other works restored, a Sally Michelle painting that had coffee had somehow gotten on it, and a Jimmy Ernst painting that was sent up to be included in the Wadsworth Athenaeum's exhibition of the Connecticut Art Trail members show called Made in Connecticut. And we are on the Connecticut Art Trail. It's a selective membership of the museums and historical societies throughout Connecticut. You have to be voted in, and we are a member now. So I always thought the Jimmy Ernst painting had this beautiful cream color to the painting, because that's how I'd always seen it. And after it went to the conservator for a cleaning, it was bright white and even more beautiful, but who knew? So I'd always looked at that painting and thought of it one way, and it was completely different. So that's the fun of getting works cleaned. The show came down February 7th, but I think you can still read about the exhibit, and there might be some display that's online at the Wadsworth Athenaeum. I'm not quite sure, but we do have Jimmy Ernst up in our abstraction, the Roots of Abstraction exhibit. And of course, he was one of the rabble-rousers who were the forerunners of the abstract expressionist movement. And his father was Max Ernst, and his father was a surrealist. And so Jimmy comes out of that surrealism indoctrination from having lived around those artists through his father's relationships and associations and colleagues. And then he went on to push the boundaries and to kind of break through so that a path would be made for abstract expressionism to emerge. So that exhibit is going to be up through next year, and I invite you to see it. You can make an appointment and come in. So just, you can call me directly and make an appointment and come and see that show as well. Sean, you want to go to the next slide, please? Thanks. Okay, so we had so many bad things have happened to us the past couple of years. So you can see in the back, those are Joe Fusigna's little sculptures. We had just finished installing the exhibit when there was a fire in the computer lab above the gallery. The sprinkler system came on and our whole show was completely ruined. Stuff floating as the ceiling tiles and the wood floors came up, and the gallery was out of commission for almost a year. And the show on the right is called Close to the Line. That was curated by the former director and curator of the Kemper Museum, Barbara O'Brien. And she retired from that position, and she's a close friend of mine. I've known her for over 30 years when she started her career at Montserrat College of Art. And then she went on to become the editor of Art New England, and then she went on to become the director of the Kemper. And now she's an independent curator. So I invited her to do this exhibition, and the sculpture in the front is by New Hampshire sculptor Kirsten Reynolds, and the artwork in the back is by Finnish artist Mari Rantanen. And so the show on the right reopened our gallery, and we were very pleased to be back in business. Sean, you want to go to the next slide? We do video interviews with artists, and we also do virtual tours. So the exhibits that I'm mentioning to you now, the Roots of Abstraction and the Masters of Op Art, which I curated the images, and I invited Sarah Churchill, who is our wonderful art history professor here. If you want to take a class with someone, which if you're over 60 or over 65, you have to check, you can take the classes for free. You can audit them, or you can put yourself through the grueling task of taking tests, whatever you want to do. She wrote the essays for them. And then I also curated a show called Photorealism, the something moment, which I can't remember the title of right now. But anyway, that is on view as well. And we have publications that you can download. You can print them out, or you can read them online. And we usually try to do a publication for every exhibit that we do. So you can access these videos and these interviews. All of the artists that we're focusing on are artists whose work is in our collection. This is Hans Nellemann, and he donated a number of photographs to our collection. And he did a lot of work in South America. And he did a book called Night Chicas, which is about sex trafficking and prostitution in South America. And he did that to kind of bring these women out of the shadows and to kind of restore some dignity to them. So he created beautiful portraits of these women, and we own a number of them. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is, again, inside the Burt Chernow Galleries, and we do special exhibitions. So this was a commission show with Rachel Owens called the Hypogean Tip. We partner with outside organizations, as I mentioned before. The Freeman Houses is a set of historic houses that are the last remaining vestiges of a community called Little Liberia, which was founded by free Blacks in Connecticut. And it also had escaped and formerly enslaved people who made their way to Connecticut and to this special community. And the sisters, Mary and Eliza Freeman, which you can look this up and read about them. I encourage you that you should learn about this community. It's a very special community, and the history is unique. I partnered with them, I don't know, maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago, And they have been trying to put the funding together, as I said, to restore these homes. They didn't have a space. They didn't have any place to call home. And now they actually did get a space. They're moving next door at 333 State Street. So they'll be living next door. But we offered to give them a space at the museum. So we have artifacts that were done from the excavation of those homes. So we have shards and tin cans and spools and clothespins and frying pans and all kinds of items that were excavated when they were doing the grounds from the house. We also have the doors from the house, and then Fairfield County Community Foundation awarded a grant to Mayisa Tisdale, who's the executive director, and she invited artists that live and work in Bridgeport to kind of reimagine Little Liberia. What would it look like? What might it have looked like then? What would it look like now if the community had survived? And so these artists created these beautiful works that are on display in this area right next to the galleries. And so hopefully these works will go and be on display in her space now that she actually has one. But we've been helping her fundraise. When the gallery was open, we gave her the space to use for her fundraising activities and things like that. In the meantime, a lot of our programming and a lot of our artists have been inspired by the history of this community. So Rachel Owens, whose work is here, if you look at the top of that painter's scaffold, you'll see there's cast glass. That's actually made from the porch of the remaining porch of the Freeman houses. And the grasses in the back are from the grasses around the Freeman houses. So the scaffolding is like a soapbox, as if you want to think of it that way. So Rachel Owens was using the history of the time, the fact that Abraham Lincoln did some of his stump speeches here, the abolitionist movement was on the rise, this was a community of free blacks, and she took all that information and she created a new work based on that. And then the American Baroque Orchestra out of Yale approached me to do a concert here. And when they came to look at the space to do the concert, they were intrigued by the exhibit. And then what they did next was they went back to the Barnegie Library and they researched the music from Little Liberia, which they actually had this music from the AME Zion Church, which you can visit to this day. It's still standing. And they took that music that was original music written by members of that community, and they played that music in this space. And that's also on my website, so you can enjoy that concert as well. So it's been nice to have all of these ways that these collections have intersected, and this information, the primary research, all these things have sparked the creativity in artists and musicians, and to me, that's what's so wonderful about art, is that we're able to bring the past that a lot of students yawn about. They don't want to think back 10 years, much less 200 years, and it makes it relevant and it makes it exciting and it meets people where they are. So you can start with contemporary work and introduce them to this great history. Okay, we can go to the next slide. I'm probably talking too much about this. Okay, so there's another view of the wonderful display by Rachel Owens. And to the right is Joe Saccio. And this is called, actually, Joe just passed away last July. He was in his 80s. This was a survey show. He was a wonderful psychiatrist. He was at Yale for many years. He was a child psychiatrist there. And he'd always wanted to be an artist. He grew up in the Bronx. He grew up during the Depression, and his parents essentially told him that he could not be an artist, that there was no money in it, and he needed to get a real job. And of course, coming out of the depths of depression, you could understand his parents' wish that he have a successful life that would support him. But after a tragedy, his son was hit by a car on Chapel Avenue, and his son was 13 years old and died instantly. Joe retreated into the arts in order to I guess, cope with the death of his son and to work out his grief. And it sparked an alternative career. When he finally retired from Yale, he became a full-time artist. And so we took as the title of the show a line from Dante's Inferno. And this work is really a survey of his work. And it's not all, based on grief. There's a lot of humor in the work as well. And this show was our November exhibit. And Rachel's was January, and it was truncated. It was shut down on March 13th. So these were the last two exhibits that we had. And they were both wonderful. The great thing about Joe's work is that he was a dumpster diver. So everything you see on display here was stuff that he found in a dumpster and he put together in these unique ways. It's all made of paper and twigs. And the piece in the center, that's all wood there, that was a tree that fell on the grounds of Yale University, and he saw it and he ran and got the maintenance fellows and had them cut it up for him and trekked it over to his studio. And out of that fallen tree comes this amazing work of art. And that piece is called The Garden of the Beheaded. So there was a dark side of Joe, but still the work is quite beautiful. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Now, this was the show that never was. So this show was up in August. We had it photographed. It was funded by the Connecticut Commission. It was Joe Fusigna. It's called Drip Drop Tick Tock. And this show, we did a beautiful catalog. We were ready for the opening when that terrible fire and flood happened. But this was the exhibit, and we will eventually have the exhibit. Joe was supposed to show it again in September, but COVID shut us down. So we're going to be trying to show this exhibit as soon as we can, but I wanted to share it here anyway. And the show since went on to different venues, which we had scheduled. It was supposed to premiere here, but, and Joe is, he lives in Weston, and he is a professor of art, and obviously his focus is sculpture, and he's at Norwalk Community College. He's a wonderful guy. And the thing I love about his work is he uses industrial materials. So all of the little objects you see on the left side there are all made from plastic snow fencing and zip ties, and fishing lures are hanging from that big blue cloud. You can't really see them. But I love that they're just these objects you can acquire, and he puts a new spin on it to create something completely unique. And the pieces floating in the right there are putty that you use for physical therapy when people have had a stroke or they need to get the use of their hand back after surgery. And when you put that putty up and it's colored, it just drips down and forms these other objects. So again, it's a way of creating these paintings in a unique way. And those white structures are just hollow core doors that have been painted white. So I sort of always love that creativity or unique way that artists have of looking at something that you could never imagine being anything but what it is, and then making something completely different from it. Okay, next slide. Now, this is exactly the goal that Burt was going for. He wanted students, and you can see them down on the right, down below there, talking to their professors, to be able to walk around. You can see the lounge at the top in the back there with the students sitting around. The slide on the left is our presidential suite, which has been completely redone and has completely different work in there now. So the theme on the left is all ships, and we have obviously traditional paintings of boats on the walls, and then you can see the little clay sculpture on the table in the front. That's a unique version of a ship. And then Vera Shupak, way in the back, does a very contemporary take on what a ship would look like sailing in the wind. So we have a variety of artwork that sometimes has a theme, and sometimes it's just the highlights of the collection. Like on the right, you'll see it's an eclectic mix of works that we have that people always ask for. So, the Picasso, the Wayne Thiebaud, Ernest Briggs, all that. But the students can go walk through the building on their way to class, on their way to lunch, or in the lunchroom, in a lounge, and they are looking at works of arts, and they're looking at photographs, paintings, sculpture by artists like, Picasso, Miro, or a new artist who's just emerging. So that's kind of the exciting thing that we offer here at the college. And again, we've been fully renovated. Even the colors that you see here, that light blue, it's all been redone, it's all painted. And I have all new areas installed. So down in that atrium area where the students are, that's all African art now. And where you see that big photograph in the back on the top, that's now an exhibit called Of Woman Born. So we rotate the exhibits. The exhibits that are on display throughout the building are obviously on view much longer because I have no staff. It's really me and a part-time person. And every once in a while, I'm able to hire art handlers to come in and help me do a big major reinstall. So the galleries usually are on a quicker rotation, and the rest of the buildings, the work is up for a little bit longer, simply because we don't have the manpower to be changing things up. Okay, you can go to the next one. And here's another view. This is our other building. This is Beacon Hall. So again, on the left, you see a student lounge. And the works up on that floor tend to be political works. They're issues of the day. And the work on the right, that's a circus theme in the front gallery there. So we have sculpture. The one on the left is called Acrobats. And then we have historic posters from the Barnum and Bailey Museum. And then we have a photograph by an artist who lives and works in the Reed's Art Building here, and it's a photograph of Barnum. So of course it's all related. We try to put in, again, thematic installations so the students can learn and that it's makes some kind of sense as to why works are placed next to each other. Okay, next slide. This is a brand new work. It went in over December and January. It's by Brooklyn-based artist. He's from South Korea originally, Jung Il Ma. He went to the School of Visual Arts in New York. He has work at Battery Park, Socrates Park. He's done a permanent piece for Stony Brook University. And I invited him here to create a unique work of art. So this was commissioned. And the space where you see it anchored at the bottom is actually the space above the gallery. It was a dead space and there was nothing much happening. And several people kept saying to me, why don't you put something there? And I thought, well, what can I do? And so I thought, well, we do installation art inside the gallery, but we don't really have any installation piece that was made specifically for our, what am I trying to say? A site-specific piece. So I asked him to come and take a look at the collection, and this work is located where the highlights of the collection is, and so he kind of took his cue from some of the works that are on display there, and it's the title is very cute. It's called Be There When You Return. So obviously the building's been empty for COVID, and this piece will be there when everybody returns. And I think it's a very lively, tumultuous, exciting piece. And we have an interview with the artist and also like a time-lapse video. They're two separate videos. So you'll be able to see the construction of this piece from the beginning to the end. And then there'll be a longer, maybe it's about 20 minutes, 17-minute video of an interview that I did with the artist. You won't hear me. It's mostly him. You'll see the questions. Otherwise, it would have gone on for 2 hours. So we cut my voice out and just did his video. But it's really spectacular, exciting piece. And it goes all the way up to the ceiling, to the skylights, and very lively. And the colors are very cheerful. So I'm happy about that work being installed. Next slide. This is, again, I mentioned about the publications. This is a Victor Vasarely. It's called Gestalt piece. It's the cover of the catalog. It's also on view in the Masters of Op. exhibition, but this is for me to remember to tell you about the publications again, so you can find the publications and have an in-depth reading about each work, about the history of that movement, and I think you'll find it, educational and enlightening. Okay, next slide. We are a state agency, and we are now part of the Connecticut College System. So our sister school is Southern Connecticut State University, and we're the community college that feeds into that school. Whenever we do an expansion or we build a new building on the campus, we become part of the state's Percent for Art program. So what does that mean? It means 1% of the building budget is dedicated to an original work of art that is created as a site-specific piece for the campus. So it's exclusive to our campus. How that works is the Connecticut Commission assembles 3 jurors who are experts in their field. They might be historians or curators or artists who create public art. And then it's comprised of members from the college. So of course, I'm invited as the director of the museum. We had a couple of members from the art department. We have members from the maintenance department. We have members from the administration. And so a big committee gets together. You know what a camel is, right? A horse that was designed by committee. So, we do our best to try to move everybody towards consensus and end up with a spectacular piece. And I do have to say, I think we ended up with a spectacular piece. This is by Susanne Kim, who is originally from New York. She's now a professor at Dartmouth University in New Hampshire. And she is an incredible artist. Again, she's another person who uses ordinary materials like chain link fencing. This happens to be wire mesh, and this is dichroic glass. And when you see this piece, the western light comes through that window, and the dichroic glass just sprinkles light all around the atrium area. It's a 3-story atrium, and the beautiful sculpture fills that whole space. And during the course of the day, the sculpture changes as the light moves, as the light changes. And then at night, when you drive by, you can see this beautiful piece glowing from Lafayette Avenue. So I recommend that you see it in the day and then come back and see it at night. It's one of the nicest pieces, I think, in the Connecticut Art Collection. And you can go to the Connecticut Office of the Arts. They changed their name. They're no longer the Connecticut Commission on the Arts, so I apologize. I always still call them that. It's Office of the Arts. They're under the DSSD, the Department of Special Services, or whatever that is. And they've got works all over the state of Connecticut. So if you're ever interested in doing a tour of public art that you as a taxpayer have paid for, I recommend that you do that, because you won't be sorry. And they're important artists, and they're located all over, from post offices to a lot of the college campuses have these works. State Library, I think, has some work. So it's a really fun thing to do, especially when springtime comes and you still don't want to be inside because you haven't gotten all your vaccinations yet. This is a trip you can do where you're outside and you're safe and you're seeing great works of art. Okay, next slide. So this is our student docent program. I started this about 21 years ago. We did a special exhibition of Ansel Adams, which is one of my favorite shows. And that's another long story. The collection belonged to Pacific Bell, and then it belonged to Southern Connecticut Telephone, or whatever that was called. And then AT&T bought it or whatever. But anyway, while it was Southern Connecticut, the collection belonged to them, and their headquarters was downtown. So we have an Ansel Adams in our collection. And so the new CEO came over to introduce himself, and the work was on display in the president's suite. And he said, I know that work. We own a suite of Ansel Adams prints. So one thing led to another. They did a fundraiser for the college. They gave $30,000 to the museum, and it kicked off our education program. And so we created a photography component. We worked with the schools in downtown Bridgeport. We had students come from all over the state. Again, it was all funded by the phone company. And the exhibit was a great success. It was so successful that the show was supposed to run for 6 weeks, and it ran for 8 weeks. We had such a big demand for it. I apologize for the phone. And so the schools loved it. The Bridgeport schools loved it. And so it kicked off our student docent program. And over the years, originally it focused on the art collection at the college. And then one day I was walking around downtown Bridgeport, and I realized, all the spectacular architecture that surrounded our facility, including the Meyer building, which was the headquarters of People's Bank. I think the building is sold now. The Barnum Museum, which sits right next to it, McLeavy Hall, which was where Abraham Lincoln did his stump speech, the arcade, which was modeled on the Crystal Palace in England, and a number of other buildings. We have a beautiful Tiffany window that sits in the old Aquarian water headquarters that you can go in and see. And I just thought, wow, this is a missed opportunity for our students to learn about architecture. And so we shifted over to focusing on architecture. So there's about 36 schools in Bridgeport. We've served about 17 of them. The program has gone everywhere from third grade to high school. We also serve the parochial schools. And again, our program is not only to teach students about architecture, it also builds civic pride, and a lot of the history that's embedded in these buildings, how they came to be here, can be taught. We've also now incorporated, I'm sure you know, Little Liberia into our program. And now, because of COVID, we've spent this time creating a completely online program, which I'm hoping can go statewide. It's geared towards 6th grade, which is when students learn about local Connecticut history. So I'm hoping that teachers take all the materials we created and include it in their curriculum. Also, in our peer docent program, the way it works is we take a small cadre of students, anywhere from 10 to 14. Any more than that, it's not as successful, because we like to have a small group of kids with one educator. And the students learn about the history of the building, the history of architecture, the history of that particular building, architectural words, the components of what you'll see when you look at that building. And they learn about that building. So they may learn about 2 out of the 5 or 6 buildings that they can select what they want to learn about. And then at the end of the 8-week program, they become the educators. And what happens is we pay for the buses to bring students from their school to meet with them, and they give the guided tours to fellow classmates. And what happens is the students now, they get a lot of respect for their teachers. They learn leadership skills. They learn group management skills. They learn empathy. They learn how to read a crowd, how to read social cues. And so they're getting these soft skills along with more formal education. Now, we give them workbooks. They do a lot of hard work. They have to write their speech, so they're working on their writing skills. They're working on their public speaking skills, which still remains the number one fear that people have. They overcome those fears. And we work with the same schools and the same teachers very often. And so we're able to find out that those students' grades, if they were a C student, they become a B student. If they were a B student, they become an A student. And if they were an A student, they sometimes have some kind of social thing that they're overcoming, which might be, again, like fear of public speaking, or they might be shy and a little more introverted. And so they pick up more performative skills. And so each cohort is kind of in a better place than where we met them. And these students also get exposed to college. So when they're in school, they can say, I can see myself here. And we've had a number of students say that, I want to come here when it's time for me to go to college. So they spend time on the campus, they learn about the campus, they learn about art, but they also learn to see themselves in the future. They can picture themselves in school and a few years out, like where will I be in 5 years? Where will I be in 10 years? The other really great thing about the program, I think, is we also introduce students to a lot of professionals, like how does the city work? So for example, they've met with an urban planner. They've met with Antonozzi architects. So they meet with real architects. They've met with a surveyor. How does that work? They learn about the sewer system. They've met with the person who plans transportation. So we try to bring in guest speakers so that they can also picture themselves. You know, you don't want to be an architect. Maybe you want to be a surveyor. Maybe you want to be a town planner. Maybe you're interested in the geography of a place. For example, Little Liberia, they learn about sea rise and all of that. So it's great. They've met with Maisa and they learn about historic preservation. So maybe they're interested in that. So we try to give the kids an overview of the things that they can do in the future. And of course, they can become museum directors or curators or museum educators. So a lot of times they're learning things in addition to the material that we're giving them. In the past, we collaborated with Obama's President's Committee on Arts and Humanities. We featured the turnaround artist Chuck Close when he was with Roosevelt School in 2013. We also created a partnership with Tom Main when he was affiliated with Hall School, and so he was our guest speaker, I guess you could say. He really dove into it. He grew up in Waterbury. He was the son of a single mother, and he went on to win the Pritzker Prize of Architecture, which is like the Nobel Prize. So here, was this guy who was totally giving back to the community. He loved the kids. He really invested in working with them. We partnered with Makerspace in Westport, which at the time was the only place with a 3D printmaker. And so the kids created these, they redesigned their school. You can see on the right, they're redesigning their school in the cafeteria, what could make it better. And then they created these little models with the 3D printer. So that was great fun. We then were invited by the Obama administration to come down to Warrenton, and they had a big 3-day symposium and workshops. And so Janet Zamparo, who was the curator of education at the time and worked with me to develop this program, she and I went and we were presenters to educators from all 50 states. So that was really quite an honor to be invited and singled out to share our program, which incorporates visual thinking strategies. On the left, that's me leading a bunch of kids through the Little Liberia installation. You can see the doors on the left. And then that's a photography project that's photographs of the house as they exist now. I'm trying to think what else we do. We were doing Friday night flicks, and that was on campus. We partnered with the Connecticut Film Festival, and now we've partnered with them again. And we had a film series in the fall that focused on art and artists, and again, artists in our collection, or about themes of, relevant to thematic installations that were on view here. And now I'm partnering with Tom Carruthers, who's the executive director, for our Women's History Month, which kicked off on Sunday night with the Souls of Black Girls, which looked at uh, the role of mass media on body image and self-esteem issues for Black girls. When every image is white women or Black women who look closer to white women, you know, what effect does that have? We have other films planned, Trapped and Equal Means Equal, and Beauty Mark, again, which looks at the influence of advertising on women, body dysmorphia and all of that. And again, this is ties into our educational programs that we offer here, classes, women's studies, and media studies and all of that. So we try to connect to larger conversations with the shows that we're doing. Let's see, what else do we do? I think that's it. I'm done. Was that 45 minutes?
Well, that was wonderful. That was, I can't wait to go there. Thank you so much. I'm sure
You're welcome.
I expressed something everybody else is probably sitting there saying is, you know, they wish they could just go there right now, but we will. I want to definitely.
Well, you can if you make an appointment. You
Make
can't
an
come as a group, but you can come individually.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe that's what we'll do. Okay. Our
We
first
also,
question.
I do want to mention, we also have an internal sculpture garden. So we have a campus.
Oh, wonderful.
With artwork. You can bring a picnic lunch and eat outside. There's picnic tables there, so you can come and take a look and then eat outside. Or like I said, we're steps away from Ralph and Rich's, and it's very safe. Downtown is very safe.
And when you say make an appointment, what would be the limit on the number of people who could do that? I mean,
well, you can only go, I think, in pairs, and you have to have a mask and all of that. Like, you can't have 10 people in a group.
Okay.
They don't want that.
But you could have 2.
The facility's big enough that you could have 10 people come, but 2 would have to see one show, 2 would have to see another show, 2 would have to go upstairs, that kind of thing.
All right, so maybe we can work that out then and not have to wait for you to get to a full opening. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, our first question really is combined with a comment. And the comment, first of all, compliments the choice of putting art throughout the building and throughout the campus. You know, oftentimes we've seen universities even with wonderful collections that confine them to a particular gallery or particular building maybe, and people don't see it unless they go there. Can you tell us if you've had other, you know, when you have visitors from other museums or other colleges and so on come to your facility and see how you've displayed things and really integrated it with the whole campus?
Well, there are a lot of campuses that want to model themselves on the Housatonic. So Ann Chernow, Burt's wife, taught for many years until she retired at Norwalk Community College. And they have a number, especially, we have a very large print collection. And prints, Anne was a printmaker. And so a lot of printmakers trade works and things like that when they're at workshops. And so we'll have a lot of the same prints at both campuses. And they have a smaller collection because, of course, Burt was more, since he was a professor and chair of the department here, he was deeply engaged with building up the collection on this campus. But he also taught at, I believe it's called Hall High School in Westport. And they have the Westport Art Collection. And when he was teaching there, before he started teaching here, and he founded the art department here when the community college was initially founded in 1967. He was invited by President Liston. And they, of course, met at libraries and the basements of churches and high schools before they got the old Singer sewing machine building. And I think part of the impetus for him to create this collection and have it on view was because if you were never at that building, it was like a bunker. It was an old factory building. It was really bleak, very bleak. So to walk through the halls and have this art to enliven the inside of this bleak building was really really important. And then he finally got some funding to build a small gallery over there. And then Lowell Weicker became governor, and part of the I can never think of the word. I want to say rehab, but not that. When you reinvigorate the downtown, we're in the old Hi-Ho Mall, and this was a site for a lot of negative activity. The mall was failing. The businesses were kind of like not doing well anymore, and all of that. So they renovated this building, and they made it the linchpin of the revitalization of downtown. And so a new buildings went across the street. The 333 State Building, which I mentioned to you, had trees growing out of the building. I mean, it was really terrible. So once the college came down as like the centerpiece, the keystone building, so to speak, developers came, they bought that building, they turned it into beautiful apartments. Art Space came and renovated Reed's building, which was an old department store. And so now we have this huge cadre of artists who live there. And so the city started to be revitalized. And of course, that came through that whole notion of the creative class writings by Richard. And of course, I can't think of his last name, but that was the whole idea that the arts can revitalize whole cities and all of that. And so a lot of restaurants moved in, because then we had the artists living downtown, so demand grew. So this was a great opportunity for Burt to pull things out of storage. A lot of stuff was in storage, and a lot of stuff was improperly stored. It was in a furnace room. So a lot of the conservation work that I've done has been to kind of repair the poor storage of the work, which was not Burt's fault. That, it was a factory building that was not designed for the storage and exhibition of artworks. So when Burt was involved on the committee for the redesign of this building, he created a storage area, and he created the new gallery and a prep room in the back for that. And then he took great pride in putting the artwork up around the facility, because it was really his dream. And sadly, after he finished that, he died suddenly of a heart attack in 1997, which is exactly when we moved down here. Now, since that time, I've renovated the storage area that Burt designed. I've renovated that 4 times and expanded it. I put in a new HVAC system, which was a $500,000 project. And so now the storage facility and the museum have their own heating and cooling systems, so that those works of art can be maintained. Because as a cost saving, as you imagine, when the kids go home and they're not using the building, the thermometer goes down to save money. There's a lot of money to save. So I started to notice, I was having a lot of problems with the collection. So we determined that needed to be done. And then we rehabbed the Sears building in, I think, 2006 or 7. And I created a paper storage area there. And I just received money from IMLS, $10,000 to finish my final storage bin area. And now that space is maxed out. So I just was mentioning to our new president, Dr. Dwayne Smith, that we're going to need a new building. Yeah. Because, that's it. I've done, it's like trying to put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. So, and we keep getting work, and I don't think they want to stop collecting. So we're going to have to figure that one out. And I would, in my dream of dreams, would like to see, to go back to your original question, which I did not forget. It's a delicate balance having these works out, because what you're risking is that they're not there for generations to come. So you're saying to yourself, are we going to have works of art, and are we going to use them up? Because that's what happens. People don't, vandalize things on purpose. I mean, we have had a couple of things like that happen, mostly for outdoor works that are on the exterior of the building. But a lot of inadvertent things, like a lot of our students are parents, and children will come in and they'll want to climb on something, or they'll touch something. We have a beautiful Zuniga. This is a perfect example. We have a beautiful Zuniga of a mother, and there's a little bit of holding on to the mother's legs. And every child that's about the size of that baby runs over to hug the baby. So, those are the things you have to think about. Now, the Zuniga happens to be a very important piece. There's only 4 of them in the world, and we have one of them. And so again, you're balancing letting someone touch it with their hands, and the oils are going to damage the patina. But what are we going to do with it? And to go back to my issue with storage, having the works on display now also function as open storage, because I would never be able to take all the work that's currently on display and put it back in storage. There's no space for it. And in fact, when we've had to do additions, like we just added an addition, and for art, the Sioux Sunny Park was an addition to the building. We pushed out towards the street and added 3 floors and a one-stop area and art studios. I had to take artwork down from the whole facility because of the dust and the shaking. They had to go down into the ground with this, I don't know what you call it, but it just, the whole building shook, and the artwork, I was scared that it would fall. So we had to put the artwork off site for 2 years into a separate storage facility. So it's a delicate balance between having the work on view and accessible, and saving and preserving the work for future generations. And I do the best I can, and I think I do a pretty good job, but it's something that has to be uppermost in your mind all the time, because obviously the building is a state regulated building. So what does that also mean? If I'm showing photographs, I can't have low lux. We have to have bright lights for people with disabilities, so nobody trips, nobody gets hurt, all those things. So, and again, I don't have the staff to rotate things quickly. So there's always the determination of what goes up, where, how long, and is it important that it be up, or is it more important that it rest? So anyway, that's a long-winded answer, but there you go.
Well, I appreciate that. We have time for only one more question. So I'll give you a question that's actually similar to something you and I were talking about before we went live, and that's about the effects of people putting things digitally and just having them available online as opposed to coming into the museum. We've had people over the years say, well, if we had something where everything was available digitally or by video, whatever, that people wouldn't want to come to museums. And I know you had some interesting observations that you shared with me, and could you share it with the audience?
Sure. Well, it could be my own intrinsic bias because I'm in the arts, but I really don't believe that. Let's just take Storm King, for example. You could access that and do like a virtual walking tour, and that's great if that's the only way you can access it. Then I think that you should absolutely access it. But what do you lose when you go to a place like that? You lose a lot. The scale of the sculpture, your body in relation to a work of art. The artist made all those choices. If you're going to make something 50 feet tall versus 50 inches tall, all those things matter. Why the artist wants you to see the texture of the surface, to see Richard Serra with the Hudson glistening in front of you, and seeing the rolling hill and seeing it go down is a very different experience. Even though you might see, it's not the same as feeling the breeze. It's not the same as walking around the piece. It's just not the same. And when, you see a De Chirico, that's in our collection, or you see a print that's on display or whatever, you don't get the same information from the surface of a work of art digitally that you do when you actually look at the work of art. Here's another perfect example, the Masters of Op Art. You can look at that show digitally. We have it online. You can look at the works. If you come here and you actually stand in front of that work of art, the way the rods and cones in your eye work and the way the artists have the colors placed, it creates a sensation that the surface is vibrating, that you're not going to get that sensation when you look at my digital images, no matter how good the photographer is that I used. And I use a great photographer, but it's just not going to happen because of the light, the distance where you stand, how the colors mix in your eye against your retina. It's just something completely different. Now, do we want to digitize our collection and have it available? Of course, because not everybody can travel. Maybe scholars want to see something and they just want to see that it exists, or they just want to look at a signature, or they want to see something and they don't have the funds to travel. Yes, I think everything should be available as a source of information, but as a source of experience, then you want an experience with the original work of art. And that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, we certainly hope we can share that and see these wonderful pieces in person. So thank you again, Robin. We appreciate your time. We appreciate learning more about Housatonic and knowing it's so close to us. Certainly a resource that we all want to take advantage of.
Well, if you need to support the museum, there's a donate button on the website, and every little bit helps. We just got a $500,000 endowment gift.
Oh, wonderful.
And we're looking to kick off a campaign. But the smaller gifts that we do help keep the student docent program running, and it helps to keep our handlers employed and all of that. So please consider helping the museum.
Okay, and also finding out more information. I'm sure it's all on the website, right?
It's all on the website.
Okay, thanks again.
You're
Bye-bye.
welcome.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye, wise women.
Thanks.
Enjoy your day. Get outside. It's gorgeous.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.